I'm really encouraged by the conversations that have happened already, and some very thought-provoking ideas and thoughts. And thanks to Sats, I hope I said your name right, just speaking into our hearts, because at the end of the day, we really, our work has to do with our hearts. And so the title of my session, or my topic, is quite a giveaway. I think you can already tell that there's a position that I've adopted, or at least there's a position that's already adopted, and you can kind of figure it out that, I think that online communities are a good idea. So the title isn't "Our Community Ideas." Our online community is a good idea. It's why they are a good idea. So that's a bit of a giveaway, but maybe I would tweak the title of this to "Online Communities Are Not a Good Idea. They're actually a great idea." And we can see this manifest or show up in different ways today, and some of that is people with job titles like community manager, or certain variations of those. That's become very normal over time, and people like Meta or Facebook, and recently, as an example, Twitter, have put in a lot of resources into communities online, if you actually think about it. So that should also tell us something. And interestingly, it's, as the church, we've been having it, right? I don't know if that saying really translates, in different parts around the world, but in South Africa, sayings like, "Hey, we've been having it," basically just speaking into, this has been a reality for us. So I think in general, community has always been essential in church life from the days of the early church. And I think as we start out, I think it's worth pointing out, I just want to talk about community, just community in general. And we can see from scripture that community, by design at its core, exists to inspire or irritate each other to acts of love and good works. If you're taking notes, you can pick that up in Hebrews 10, 24 to 25. And that same scripture also speaks about encouraging one another, spurring one another into acts of love and good works. If you think about spurs, they're actually not a great tool. If you think about it, those of us who have ridden horses or watched westerns, you see spurs on people on people who are riding horses. They have spurs on their boots, and that's to dig into the horse, to irritate or agitate it into certain action. And the writer of the letter of Hebrews seems to suggest something similar. Like, one of the reasons community exists is that we can irritate each other to acts of love and good works. Like, come on, you can do better than that, Matt. Matt 1, or Matt 2, are you thinking what I'm thinking, Matt 2? Matt 2, you need to be nicer. Why are you not kinder? That kind of thing. Community is also about mutual edification. By the way, Matt and Matt are great. I was just using them as an example. But community exists for mutual edification. If you read that in Romans 12, 3 to 13, about if you're an administrator, administrate. If you're a leader, lead. If you care for people, care for people. And 1 Corinthians 12 to 13, again, speaks about how we are given that we have different gifts, spiritual gifts or manifestations of the Spirit that allow us to serve each other so that the church is built up and can be effective in mission. That same idea comes across again in Ephesians 4, where we discover that the gifts of the apostle, the teacher, all these people is to help us to mature as Christians. Community is important for restoring the fallen. Sometimes we need other people to pick us up and to help restore us. And community is essential. Galatians 6, 1 and 2, community is essential because that's one of the ways we bear one another's burdens. And then Jesus in John 13 speaks to his disciples and he says, love one another. And the world will know that you are my disciples by how you love one another. In other words, that they love for one another is an important witness to the world. In fact, our evangelism is incomplete if there is no love for each other as brothers and sisters. And so there is evangelism involved in that. And then I think I could go on and give more and more examples around why community is important. But the reason I do that is because there's an elephant every time we talk about online community and anything we talk about online in relation to our spiritual formation. And this elephant is in the room. I wonder where that saying came from. I'd love to know the etymology. But anyway, the elephant in the room is that, our online community is valid as community. And I find that quite interesting because when we order our groceries online, we say we were shopping, or even if it was online shopping, it doesn't take away from the fact that we shopped. If we, have a conversation or have a meeting on Zoom and not in a room, see what I did there? We don't say that we did not have a meeting because it was online. And I find it a little perplexing sometimes when the conversation shifts to our spiritual formation or evangelism and discipleship, that we then discount or treat any engagement or community online as, to some extent, not as relevant or as effective as being in the same space physically. So I think we probably could invest a lot of time just having that conversation. But to really simplify it in a very basic way, I do not think that it's either or. It's either the way our community functions or the way we function as a community or the way we have communion together is dependent on whether it's in person or online or both. I think the language that we have these days is hybrid. So I think it's important to recognize that online communities are not in any way less communities because they are online and they are not in a format that has come from, has been historically without tech and without the internet and all the resources we have today. And it's also worth remembering that the reason that we don't have the Bible speaking about online communities is because, well, I mean, hello, there was no internet then. So the bottom line, well, not the bottom line, but one of the big ideas I think I want to communicate is that I think maybe the conversation should not really be about whether online communities are valid or whether they're effective or whether they're a good idea. Maybe the conversation should be refining what community actually means and refining how we can be effective as a community, and then looking at the resources that are available to us from a technological perspective and saying, how can we actually leverage what community is or should be or what it's supposed to accomplish? And I think that's where the conversation really needs to be. I have no doubt that if the early church had access to, end-to-end encryption communication methods that were instantaneous and just made geography relevant, I'm sure in those times of persecution, they would have opted to use that. I think they'd have opted to send a WhatsApp message or Signal or Telegram or whatever other platforms. I'm sure they would have opted to have prayer meetings on Zoom instead of the room. So I think that we need to make the shift from just thinking that it's either in person or online. It can be either or, and I believe that it can be both. And the way that and from a lived experience, and I think I know that to be true. And then maybe I'll also touch on some of these ideas about why I think they're a good idea. The first thing is that, they're everywhere. Community is not bound to being in the same place and in person. I love that, Isaac. Yes, waiting in the upper Zoom. So imagine that. I think somebody should buy that domain quickly, upperzoom.com. But the thing about this is that the idea, before I distracted myself, the something that's important for us to realize: communities online are a good idea because the means to communicate and the means to engage online is present day reality. It's a normal part of life today. We are, if you think about people's everyday life right now, as much as they can be a member of a sports club where they go to play a sport in person, it could be tennis. I play squash. So I could be a member of a golf club where I go in person. At the same time, I'm part of a WhatsApp group or community. And that WhatsApp group, I'll use my family as an example. We have an expression that exists in person. We have family gatherings. We have family lunches. We have family in-person, in same room conversations. And often they actually continue within the WhatsApp group. And then so what happens is that we are strengthened, our community is strengthened through using both. So they're a good idea because we don't have to wait till we see each other or be in the same space together physically for us to commune or for us to have communion, if I can use that language. I can, the same way that I don't have to wait till I see someone to encourage them. I can do that within, I can do that online. And it doesn't matter where I am. We have access to each other. We have access to each other at any moment, at any time. I can actually contribute. I can actually reach out to people. I can ask for help. I can get encouragement. I can inspire others to act kindly. I can challenge others to grow in their Christ-likeness. So I think that we need to realize that, we don't have to wait for a certain time till we see each other to enable community or to move community or to contribute to community or to be encouraged or to receive from community. The other thing that I think is also good for us to pay attention to is that communities also do provide unique opportunity for hospitality. Yeah, you heard that right. I think in our minds, we've got, we need to really get out of the mindset that that hospitality is actually seeing people just in person. It's when you open the door to your house, the wood door. But sometimes community looks like this person is waiting on Zoom. It's sometimes hospitality also looks like making provision for people who have limitations when it comes to gathering in person, whether it's gathering in person or whether it's seeing each other in person in the same room. I think COVID really taught us or challenged us to think differently, or I hope has made us aware that there actually, even before COVID, there are people who are immunocompromised. I don't know if I'm using the correct term, but people who have health challenges who can't even be in the same, that being in the same room or space physically with other people puts their health and their lives at risk. So online communities really become a good idea because they give those people who have those kind of challenges access into the resources and nourishment and all the other things that community provides or should provide. It gives those people opportunity to contribute whatever gifts that they have and to bring to the strengthening of everybody. So, I think online communities may be one of the best ways we can love some of our neighbors. Yeah, man, this just, this thought, as I was thinking about today, is probably one that actually just shook me again. I literally felt like I was being shaken or shaken. This is being recorded. Oh my goodness. But I really felt like a reminder. It was almost jarring, I even felt like, hey, I was being reminded that there are people whom I excluded from community because, the limitation, because they, because we've put barriers and limited community to just an experience that is restricted to being in the same physical space all the time. And sometimes, another thought again, sometimes offline action tends to start with online engagement. And we know that. We've seen it many times. We've seen campaigns start online that ended up into something being actioned and change happening in what some people will call the real world. We don't make any distinction at the moment. The world, if you think about your own life and our own lives, we don't make distinctions between like, oh yeah, so we changed this law because we signed a petition offline or online. We've changed the world. We've changed reality for some people because there was engagement that happened online. And so I hope that we don't buy into this myth of a zero-sum game that is, this online versus same physical space. One of the things that I love about Alpha, so for instance, Alpha right now, you might not know this, some of you, but Alpha has recognized that evangelism also doesn't have to wait until we can gather people together to have to be part of an Alpha course together in the same room. But conversation can happen online. So exciting apps like Alpha Now, which is Alpha's response to evangelism online in some way. It's basically like a Zoom, except it's designed at no cost. You don't need to pay for licenses, but the way that it's designed is such that people can explore the Christian faith in community without feeling threatened. Some people will not walk into a room in a church building, but they will walk into a Zoom online. hello. So I've probably overused that. When we edit this post, Matt, please take that off. The room and Zoom and room. But then this element of hospitality, of creating safe spaces online, when people come to faith online, for example, by doing an alpha online or whatever other resources or opportunities are available online, they're still as much Christ followers as they are as the person who came to faith sitting in a pew in a physical building. So I think online communities provide opportunity for radical hospitality as well, and it's a safe way of inviting people into spaces. So I hope that we can embrace that. And maybe I hope I haven't spoken too fast and said too many things too quickly. But maybe let me just also tell a bit of a story in terms of ChurchMag. So ChurchMag has been in existence for almost 15 years. Okay, almost 15 years, and we probably have, I don't know, close to 12 million engagements. I think maybe it's not a lot in some instances or for some people, but for us, we feel that it's been significant. We've, people who've either engaged our content on our blog or access some resource or listened to our podcast or reached out to us directly and we had conversations with. And in that period, I've never met, until a few weeks ago, I've only met one of the team members in ChurchMag. One of the team members at ChurchMag, one of the team members at ChurchMag a few weeks ago. And the reason, but they have been some of the people that I've spoken to more than any other people that I've seen in person. We've encouraged each other. We've challenged each other into Christ-likeness. We've been there for each other during different times of transition. So I think just to summarize this, I would want us to walk away with this thought, is that community is community. And we don't have to buy into the argument of, is it real community, whether it's online or offline, in person, in the same space or same room or not? I think that's irrelevant. I think, of course, there are limitations in terms of what we can do online versus in person, and even vice versa. But the challenge that I'd want to leave us with is not to think of either or in terms of community, but to think, how can we actually leverage online community so that we have a full expression of community? And this is the part that I ask Matt to start walking up the platform.